Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna,
And now, Chapter 25, Unalloyed Devotion, from the first canto, 8th chapter, 42nd text of the Srimad Bhagavatam.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Tvai me nanya vishaya matir madhu pate sakrit ratim udva hatad adha gange vogam udanvati. Translation. O Lord of Madhu, as the Ganges forever flows to the sea without hindrance, let my attraction be constantly drawn unto you without being diverted to anyone else. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Perfection of pure devotional service is attained when all attention is diverted toward the transcendental loving service of the Lord. To cut off the tie of all other affections does not mean complete negation of the finer elements, like affection for someone else. This is not possible. A living being, whoever he may be, must have this feeling of affection for others, because this is a symptom of life. The symptoms of life, such as desire, anger, hankerings, and feelings of attraction, cannot be annihilated. Only the objective has to be changed. Desire cannot be negated, but in devotional service, the desire is changed only for the service of the Lord in place of desire for sense gratification. The so-called affection for family, society, country, etc., consists of different phases of sense gratification. When this desire is changed for the satisfaction of the Lord, it is called devotional service. In the Bhagavad Gita, we can see that Arjuna desired not to fight with his brothers and relations just to satisfy his own personal desires. But when he heard the message of the Lord, Srimad Bhagavad Gita, he changed his decision and served the Lord. And for his doing so, he became a famous devotee of the Lord, for it is declared in all the scriptures that Arjuna attained spiritual perfection by devotional service to the Lord in friendship. The fighting was there, the friendship was there, Arjuna was there, and Krishna was there. But Arjuna became a different person by devotional service. Therefore, the prayers of Kunti also indicate the same categorical changes in activities. Srimati Kunti wanted to serve the Lord without diversion, and that was her prayer. This unalloyed devotion is the ultimate goal of life. Our attention is usually diverted to the service of something which is non-godly or not in the program of the Lord. When the program is changed into the service of the Lord, that is to say, when the senses are purified in relation with the service of the Lord, it is called pure, unalloyed devotional service. Srimati Kunti Devi wanted that perfection and prayed for it from the Lord. Her affection for the Pandavas and the Vrishnis is not out of the range of devotional service, because the service of the Lord and the service of the devotees are identical. Sometimes service to the devotee is more valuable than service to the Lord. But here the affection of Kunti Devi for the Pandavas and the Vrishnis was due to family relation. This tie of affection in terms of material relation is the relation of Maya, because the relations of the body or the mind are due to the influence of the external energy. Relations of the soul, established in relation with the Supreme Soul, are factual relations. When Kunti Devi wanted to cut off the family relation, she meant to cut off the relation of the skin. The skin relation is the cause of material bondage, but the relation of the soul is the cause of freedom. This relation of the soul to the soul can be established by the via medium of the relation with the Supersoul. Seeing in the darkness is not seeing, but seeing by the light of the sun means seeing the sun and everything else which was unseen in the darkness. That is the way of devotional service. In the previous verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, Queen Kunti prayed that the Lord kindly cut off her attraction for her kinsmen, the Pandava and Vrishni families. However, giving up one's attraction for material things is not sufficient. The Mayavadi philosophers say, Brahma Satyam Jagan Mitya, which means, quote, this world is false, and Brahman, spirit, is truth, unquote. We admit this, but qualify it. As living entities, we want enjoyment. Enjoyment means variety. It is not possible to enjoy anything without variety. Why has God created so many colors and so many forms? In order to create enjoyment out of variety, for variety is the mother of enjoyment. Mayavadi philosophers, impersonalists, want to negate this variety. But what is the result? Because they do not engage in devotional service, they simply undertake the hard labor of austerities and penances without achieving any permanent result. This is explained by a prayer in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 2, Text 32. Ye nye ravindaksha vimukta maninas, tvayasta bhavad avishuddha buddhaya, aruhya krichrena parampadam tatha, patantyado nadrata yushmad angraya. Which means, quote, O lotus-eyed Lord, those who think they are liberated in this life, but do not render devotional service to you, must be of impure intelligence. Although they accept severe austerities and penances, and rise to the spiritual position, to impersonal Brahman realization, they fall down again because they neglect to worship your lotus feet, unquote. The human form of life is meant for re-establishing our relationship with God and acting according to that relationship. Even in ordinary dealings, one businessman who intends to do business with another must first establish some relationship with him, and then transactions can take place. Similarly, a husband and wife establish a relationship by marriage, and then they live together. In a similar way, human life is meant for re-establishing our relationship with God. The material world means forgetfulness of this relationship. There is no Krishna consciousness in this material world. For as soon as there is Krishna consciousness, as soon as there is action on the basis of Krishna, it is no longer the material world but the spiritual world. As a woman, Kunti Devi had a relationship with two families. That was her attachment. Therefore she prayed to Krishna to cut off these relationships and free her. But after becoming free, what should she do? That is the question. One may be employed in some business and, feeling inconvenience, resign. That resignation may be all right, but if by resigning one becomes unemployed and has no engagement, then what is the value of resigning? Those who are frustrated and confused want to negate this material world. They know what they don't want, but they do not know what they do want. People are always saying, "I don't want this." But what do they want? That they do not know. What one should actually want is explained by Kunti Devi. She says, "Let my family relationships cease, but let my relationship with you be confirmed." In other words, she does not want to be attracted to anything but Krishna. This is perfection, and this is actually wanted. The word Ananya Vishaya means Ananya Bhakti, undeviating devotional service. We must simply be attached to Krishna 24 hours a day without deviation. In this way, our renunciation can be perfect. If we think we can be attached to Krishna and material things at the same time, we are mistaken. We cannot ignite a fire and at the same time pour water on it. If we do, the fire will not act. The Mayavadi sannyasis renounce this world. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mitya. It is very good to preach renunciation of the world, but side by side, we must have attraction for something, otherwise our renunciation will not remain. We see many Mayavadi sannyasis who say, Brahma Satyam Jagan Mitya, but after they take sannyas, they return to the material world to open hospitals and do philanthropic work. Why? If they have left this world, considering it mitya, false, why do they return to take up politics, philanthropy, and sociology? Actually, this is bound to happen, for we are living entities and are active. If out of frustration we try to become inactive, we shall fail in our attempt. We must engage in activities. The supreme activity, the Brahman or spiritual activity, is devotional service. Unfortunately, the Mayavadis do not know this. They think that the spiritual world is void. However, the spiritual world is exactly like the material world in that it has varieties. In the spiritual world, there are also houses, trees, roads, chariots. Everything is there, but without the material inebrieties. As described in Brahma Samhita, chapter 5, text 29, Chintamani prakara sadmasu kalpa vriksha laksha vriteshu surabhi abhipalayantam Lakshmi Sahasrashata Sambrama Sevyamanam Govinda Mari Purusham Tam Aham Bhajami. Which means, quote, I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor, who is tending the cows, yielding all desires in abodes built with spiritual gems, surrounded by millions of purpose trees, and always served with great reverence and affection by hundreds of thousands of goddesses of fortune or gopis. Unquote. In the spiritual world, there are kalpa vriksha trees, which yield whatever type of fruit we desire. In the material world, a mango tree cannot supply grapes, nor can a grapevine supply mangoes. In the spiritual world, however, if we take a mango from a tree and at the same time desire grapes, the tree will supply them. This is called a desire tree. These are some of the actualities of the spiritual world. In this material world, we require sunlight and moonlight, but in the spiritual world, there is no need of sunlight and moonlight because everything and everyone is effulgent. In Krishna Lila, Krishna stole butter, and the neighborhood friends of Mother Yashoda complained. Actually, they were not complaining, but were just enjoying the bodily features and the fun of Krishna. They told Mother Yashoda, "Your son comes to our house and steals butter. We try to conceal it in the dark so that he cannot see it, but somehow he still finds it out. You had better take away all his ornaments, because we think that the light of his jewels helps him find the butter pot." Mother Yashoda replied, "Yes, I will take off all his ornaments." But the neighbors would reply, No, it is useless. Somehow this boy has an effulgence that comes out of himself. He can find the butter even without the ornaments." Thus the transcendental body is effulgent. It is because of the effulgence of Krishna's transcendental body that there is light. Whatever light we see is simply borrowed light from Krishna's effulgence. As stated in the Brahma Samhita, chapter 5, text 40, Yasya prabha prabhavato jagadanda koti kotishvashesha vasudadi vibhuti binam tad brahma nishkalamanantam ashesha bhutam govindamari purusham tam aham bhajami. Which means, quote, "In the millions and millions of universes there are innumerable planets, and each of them is different from the others by its cosmic constitution. All of these planets are situated within the spiritual effulgence called the Brahma Jyoti. This Brahma Jyoti is the bodily effulgence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whom I worship." Unquote. The bodily effulgence of Krishna generates millions of universes. In this solar system, the sun produces many planets, and because of sunshine, the planets are warm and the seasons change. Because of the sun, there are trees, green foliage, fruits, and flowers. Similarly, whatever we see in creation is all due to Krishna's bodily effulgence. The Mayavadis simply see the effulgence, which is impersonal. They cannot see anything more. We may see an airplane rise in the sky, but after a while it passes out of our sight due to the dazzling sunshine. The airplane is there, but we cannot see it. Similarly, if we simply try to see the effulgent Brahmajyoti, we are unable to see within it. One of the mantras in the Ishopanishad, therefore, petitions the Lord to wind up his effulgence so that he can be seen properly. The Mayavadi philosophers cannot see the personal activities of Krishna, nor the planet where Krishna is personally active. The Bhagavatam says, Aruhya Krishrena Parampadam Tata Patantyado Nadrata Yushmad Angraya. Because they do not see the lotus feet of Krishna, they have to return to this material world, despite all their serious penances and austerities. Thus, renunciation in itself will not help us. We may artificially renounce, but again we shall become so-called enjoyers. Such renunciation and enjoyment is like a pendulum that goes this way and that. On one side, we become false renunciants, and on the other, we become false enjoyers. The remedy, however, is here. If we really want to become detached from this material world, we must increase our attachment for Krishna consciousness. Renunciation alone will not help us. Therefore, Kunti Devi prays, Tvai me nanya vishaya. She prays that her attraction be constantly drawn unto Krishna without being diverted to anything else. This is bhakti, pure devotional service. For as mentioned by Rupa Goswami, devotional service should be unalloyed. Anyabila shita shunyam, jnana karma dhyanarvitam. In this material world, there are jnanis and karmis. The karmis are fools who unnecessarily work very hard, and the jnanis are those who, when a little elevated, think, why work so hard? So many things are not required. Why accumulate so much money and food and so much false prestige? The jnani thinks in this way. The bhakta, however, is beyond the karmi and the jnani. The karmi has many desires, and the jnani tries to get rid of all desires, but desirelessness can be possible only when we desire to serve Krishna. Otherwise, it is not possible to get rid of desires. Jnana karma dhyanavritam. As bhaktas, we should have no desires for jnana and karma. We should be without attachment for material things, but we must have attachment for Krishna. In this way, our detachment will be fixed. We must cultivate Krishna consciousness favorably. Anukulyena Krishna Nushilanam. This means thinking of how Krishna will be satisfied. We must always think of Krishna just like the gopis. The Krishna consciousness of the gopis was perfect because they had no desire other than to try to please Krishna. That is perfection. Therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu recommends Ramya Kachid Upasana Vraja Vadhu Vargena Ya Kalpita. There is no better process by which to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead than that method adopted by the gopis. The gopis had no desire other than to satisfy Krishna. All the gopis tried to satisfy him, including the elder gopis, Yashoda and her friends, and so also did the elderly gopas like Nanda Maharaj and his friends. The boys and girls of Vrindavan, who were of the same age as Krishna, also tried to satisfy him. Everyone tried to satisfy Krishna, even the cows, the flowers, the fruits, and the water of Vrindavan. This is because everything in Vrindavan is spiritual, nothing is material. We should understand the difference between spiritual and material. That which is material has no living symptoms, and that which is spiritual has all living symptoms. Both the trees in the spiritual world and those in the material world are living entities, but in trees here, the living symptoms are absent. A human being is a living entity, and the devotees in the spiritual world are also living entities. But in the human beings who are not Krishna conscious, the real symptoms of life are absent. Actually, there is no other consciousness but Krishna consciousness, and that consciousness is spiritual. Thus, even while in this material world, if we simply increase our Krishna consciousness, we shall live in the spiritual world. If we live in the temple, we live in the spiritual world, because in the temple there is no business other than Krishna consciousness. There are so many engagements carried out for Krishna. Those who strictly follow the regulations of Krishna consciousness actually live in the spiritual world, not the material world. We may think we are living in New York, Los Angeles, or elsewhere, but we are actually living in Vaikuntha. It is a question of consciousness. A bug may sit on the same seat with the spiritual master, but because the spiritual master has developed consciousness and the bug does not, they are different. They may be sitting in the same place, but the bug remains a bug, and the spiritual master remains the spiritual master. The position in space may remain the same, just as we remain in the material world or the spiritual world. But if our Krishna consciousness is strong, we are not in the material world. Thus, renunciation by itself, the simple giving up of worldly things, is not sufficient. Renunciation may be a helpful process, but it will not help absolutely. When we increase our attachment for Krishna, our renunciation will be perfect. As we increase attachment for Krishna, attachment for this material world will automatically diminish. Attachment for Krishna and the material world cannot go hand in hand. If a woman is attached to two men, her husband and her paramour, she cannot maintain her attachment for both. Her attachment will increase for her paramour. Although she may work at her husband's home very nicely, her mind will be attached to her paramour, and she will think, "When shall I meet him tonight?" In the same way, if we increase our attachment for Krishna, detachment or renunciation of this material world will automatically come. Bhakti pareshanu bhavo viraktir anyatra cha. From the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 2, Text 42. Thus Kunti Devi prays to Krishna that he may grant her his mercy by which she can become attached to him. We cannot increase our attachment for Krishna without Krishna's mercy. We cannot become devotees without Krishna's mercy. Therefore we simply have to serve Krishna, for by service Krishna is satisfied. Krishna does not require anyone's service, for he is perfect in himself. However, if we give him service wholeheartedly and sincerely, then by his mercy we shall make advancement. Sevan mukhe hi jivado svayam eva spuratyadha. God will reveal himself to us. We cannot see God with our blunt eyes. How then can we see him? Premanjana churita bhakti velochanena santa sadaiva hridayeshu velokayanti. From the Brahma Samhita, Chapter 5, Verse 38. We have to smear our eyes with the ointment of love. Then Krishna will reveal himself. Krishna will actually come in front of us. When Dhruva Maharaj was undergoing penance and meditating upon the form of Vishnu within his heart, the Vishnu form suddenly disappeared, and his meditation broke. Upon opening his eyes, Dhruva Maharaj immediately saw Vishnu before him. Like Dhruva Maharaj, we should always think of Krishna. And when we attain perfection, we shall see Krishna before us. This is the process. We should not be too hasty. We should wait for the mature time. Of course, it is good to be eager to see Krishna, but we should not become discouraged if we do not see him immediately. If a woman gets married and wants a child immediately, she will be disappointed. It is not possible to have a child immediately. She must wait. Similarly, we cannot expect that just because we engage ourselves in Krishna consciousness, we can see Krishna immediately. But we must have faith that we will see him. We must have firm faith that because we are engaged in Krishna consciousness, we shall be able to see Krishna face to face. We should not be disappointed. We should simply go on with our Krishna-conscious activities, and the time will come when we will see Krishna, just as Kunti Devi sees him face to face. There is no doubt about this. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that even if one is sometimes found to be somewhat misbehaved, he is to be considered saintly if he engages steadily in the service of Krishna. Sometimes American or European devotees may be criticized because they make mistakes and fall short of the system for worshipping the deity as practiced in India. But still, according to Bhagavad Gita, they must be considered saintly. We must fix our minds upon serving Krishna sincerely and seriously. And then, even if there is some mistake, Krishna will excuse it. Rupa Goswami says, Tasmat kenyapyupayena mana Krishne naveshaye. We should first fix our minds upon Krishna, and then the ability to follow the other rules and regulations will automatically follow. In the beginning, we should try our best to fix our minds upon the lotus feet of Krishna, and then everything else will automatically become correct. Kunti Devi addresses Krishna as Madhupati. Krishna has thousands of names, and the name Madhupati indicates that he killed the demon Madhu. Krishna consciousness is likened to a river, but not an ordinary river. It is like the river Ganges, which is very pure and directly connected to Krishna. Kunti Devi prays that just as the river Ganges flows toward the sea, her attraction will flow incessantly toward Krishna's lotus feet. This is called Ananya Bhakti, unalloyed devotion. Thus, Kunti Devi prays that her attraction for Krishna will flow without hindrance.